Hello and welcome back to Rising Path. Mercury enters Virgo on August 25th, bringing a noticeable shift in the way we think, communicate, organize information, and make decisions. Mercury is the planet connected with the mind, communication, learning, information, planning, and the way we process what is happening around us. Virgo is a practical, analytical, and detail-oriented sign, and Mercury is especially comfortable here. During this transit, attention moves away from broad ideas and toward the details. There can be a stronger desire to understand how something works, improve what is inefficient, solve problems, organize plans, and make choices based on what is useful and realistic. Conversations may become more precise. Small details that were previously overlooked can suddenly become important, and many people may find themselves thinking more carefully before making a decision. This can be an excellent period for planning, writing, studying, organizing information, reviewing schedules, improving routines, and dealing with practical matters that require concentration. But Mercury in Virgo can also become overly analytical. There can be a tendency to think about every possibility, focus too heavily on small imperfections, or spend so much time trying to make something perfect that progress becomes slower. The house Virgo occupies in the birth chart will show where this Mercury transit is likely to be most noticeable. And if you enjoy these astrology videos, please like the video and subscribe to Rising Path. For personal astrology readings, you can book a consultation. Aries Ascendant. Mercury enters Virgo and moves through the sixth house, placing greater emphasis on work, daily responsibilities, routines, organization, and the practical details of everyday life. This is a productive position for Mercury. Virgo naturally examines how things function and looks for ways to improve them. So this period can bring greater awareness of what is efficient and what has become unnecessarily complicated. The working environment may become busier. Conversations with colleagues, changing schedules, paperwork, messages, appointments, and smaller responsibilities can require more attention than usual. Several practical matters may need to be handled at once, making organization especially important. There can also be a desire to put better systems in place. A routine that has become disorganized may need adjusting. A workspace could be reorganized, or a more effective way of managing time may become obvious. Small changes can have a noticeable effect during this transit. Mercury in Virgo is particularly good at spotting what others overlook. Errors, inconsistencies, missing information, or inefficient methods can become easier to recognize. This can be useful for correcting problems before they become more difficult to manage. The challenge is becoming too focused on what is imperfect. The sixth house can bring attention to everything that still needs fixing, and Mercury in Virgo can keep the mind occupied with details long after they have stopped being important. There is a difference between improving something and constantly finding another reason to change it. Daily habits can also receive more thought. This may involve scheduling, physical routines, workload, eating patterns, or simply recognizing which habits support a productive day and which ones create unnecessary pressure. For Aries Ascendant, this is a period of refinement. Mercury in Virgo brings the opportunity to clear up unfinished details, improve daily systems, and create greater order in the parts of life that often operate quietly in the background. Taurus Ascendant. Mercury enters Virgo and moves through the fifth house, turning the mind toward creativity, personal interests, enjoyment, children, hobbies, and the things that make life feel more expressive. Mercury in this part of the chart often brings a desire to do something with an idea rather than simply think about it. A creative project may begin taking shape. An old interest could become important again, or something that was previously done casually may receive much more concentration. Virgo adds patience and precision, making this especially useful for activities that require technique, practice, writing, editing, designing, or improving a particular skill. Communication can also become lighter and more playful. There may be more conversations around personal interests, entertainment, social activities, or plans that provide a break from practical responsibilities. Humor can become sharper, observations more clever, and there may be greater enjoyment in exchanging ideas with people who share similar interests. Matters involving children can require additional communication as well. School arrangements, activities, schedules, decisions, or simply spending more time listening and discussing what is happening may become part of the picture. Mercury tends to bring movement wherever it travels, so this area of life may become noticeably more active. There is also something very selective about Mercury in Virgo. Rather than being impressed by something simply because it is exciting, Taurus Ascendant may become more interested in whether an idea actually has substance. Creative work can be examined more critically, and improvements may come through noticing small details that previously seemed insignificant. The fifth house also relates to taking chances and following personal enthusiasm. Mercury, here, tends to bring more calculation into those situations. Instead of acting entirely on impulse, there may be more thought about consequences, timing, or whether something deserves the energy being invested in it. One possible difficulty is overthinking what should be enjoyable. Virgo can analyze something so thoroughly that spontaneity disappears. A creative idea does not always need to be perfected before it can be shared, and an enjoyable experience does not have to be productive to have value. This transit can also bring interesting conversations with people who stimulate curiosity. A connection may develop through shared interests, humor, learning, or creative activity, rather than through anything especially serious at first. For Taurus Ascendant, Mercury in Virgo brings intelligence into the fifth house in a very practical way. Ideas can become projects, interests can become skills, and creative energy can become much more focused when there is enough freedom to experiment without demanding perfection from every result. Gemini Ascendant. Mercury enters Virgo and moves through the fourth house, shifting mental activity toward home, family, living arrangements, personal history, and matters that normally remain behind closed doors. Mercury is particularly important for Gemini Ascendant, so a change of sign can be felt quite strongly. In Virgo, thinking becomes more methodical and practical, and within the fourth house this can create a strong desire to sort out something connected with the home environment. There may be paperwork, household decisions, repairs to organize, conversations with relatives, or practical changes that require careful planning. The home itself may become a place of greater activity. Items may need sorting, rooms reorganizing, documents reviewing, or schedules coordinating between different members of the household. Small issues that have been ignored can suddenly become difficult to overlook, especially when they interfere with the smooth running of everyday life. Family communication is another important part of this transit. Subjects that have been left unfinished may return for discussion. Information can emerge that helps explain a previous situation, or a conversation with a parent, sibling, or other relative may bring a different understanding of something from the past. Mercury in Virgo tends to remember details. When moving through the fourth house, memories may become unusually specific with old conversations, places, or experiences returning to mind. This does not necessarily mean becoming trapped in the past. In many cases, the purpose is to understand it more clearly and separate what actually happened from the story that has been built around it over time. There can also be more thought about where and how to live. Questions about moving, changing the use of a room, working from home, dealing with property matters, or creating a more functional personal environment can become relevant. Research may be involved before any major decision is made. Because Gemini naturally keeps the mind active, this transit can make it difficult to mentally switch off at home. Household matters may continue circulating through the mind, even when nothing can immediately be done about them. Creating some separation between practical problems and private time can prevent minor concerns from taking over too much mental space. This is also an excellent period for gathering family information, organizing photographs or records, studying family history, or having conversations that preserve stories that might otherwise be forgotten. For Gemini Ascendant, Mercury in Virgo brings attention inward. The external world may still be busy, but some of the most useful conversations and decisions can happen privately, creating greater clarity around home, family, and the foundations upon which everything else is built. Cancer Ascendant. Mercury enters Virgo and travels through the third house, creating one of the busiest and most communicative periods of this Mercury cycle. The third house governs everyday communication, learning, local movement, siblings, neighbors, short journeys, paperwork, messages, and the constant exchange of information that happens during ordinary life. With Mercury in Virgo here, those areas can become much more active, but also more organized. There may be an increase in calls, emails, conversations, appointments, documents, errands, and small decisions. Information can arrive quickly and from several directions at once. Virgo helps sort through what matters, making it easier to distinguish useful facts from background noise. This position is especially favorable for learning. Subjects that require concentration, analysis, language skills, writing, technical understanding, or attention to detail can become easier to approach. Something confusing may finally make sense once it is broken into smaller pieces. Writing and speaking can become more precise as well. Cancer Ascendant may become less interested in vague explanations and more concerned with exactly what was said, what was agreed, and what the facts actually show. This can be useful when negotiating, completing paperwork, asking questions, or correcting misinformation. Relationships with siblings or people in the immediate environment may also require more communication. A sibling could have news to share, a practical issue may need discussing, or frequent contact with neighbors and familiar people may become part of daily life. These interactions do not necessarily need to be dramatic to become significant. Sometimes a small conversation contains exactly the information that was needed. Local surroundings may attract more attention too. New shops, services, classes, activities, or changes in the neighborhood may become noticeable. Mercury encourages curiosity, so familiar places can suddenly offer something different when viewed with greater awareness. The challenge with this transit is mental overload. The third house can produce constant stimulation, and Virgo can make every detail seem important. A minor message can be analyzed repeatedly, or too much time can be spent correcting things that would have been perfectly acceptable as they were. There can also be a tendency to speak with unusual precision. That can be an advantage, but words may sound more critical than intended when the focus is entirely on what needs improvement. For Cancer Ascendant, Mercury in Virgo sharpens the everyday mind. This is a strong period for learning, communicating, asking better questions, organizing information, and dealing efficiently with the many small exchanges that quietly shape daily life. Leo Ascendant, Mercury enters Virgo and moves into the second house, directing attention toward money, possessions, personal resources, spending choices, income, and the practical question of what something is genuinely worth. This is a very different atmosphere from Mercury, moving through Leo. The emphasis becomes less about making an impression and more about evaluating what is useful, sustainable, and financially sensible. Money matters may require closer attention. Bank statements, subscriptions, household expenses, contracts, purchases, or sources of income can become subjects for review. Mercury in Virgo is excellent at noticing small discrepancies, so expenses that have been quietly accumulating may become much easier to identify. There may also be conversations concerning pay, pricing, fees, business arrangements, or the value of a particular skill. For some Leo ascendants, this can be a period of calculating what a project is actually worth rather than simply accepting the first figure presented. The second house is not limited to money. It also describes resources already available, including abilities that can be developed into something useful. Mercury here can reveal a skill that deserves more attention. Writing, teaching, administration, communication, analysis, organization, or technical knowledge may have more practical value than previously recognized. Purchasing decisions may become more selective. Rather than buying because something is attractive in the moment, there can be more comparison, research, reading reviews, checking details, and deciding whether the quality justifies the cost. Virgo likes value that can be demonstrated. This transit can also bring new ideas about creating income. These may begin quite modestly, selling something no longer needed, offering a particular service, reorganizing a business process, adjusting prices, or finding a more efficient way of using resources already available. The difficulty comes when financial thinking becomes excessively detailed. Constant calculations can create unnecessary concern, particularly if every small expense is treated as evidence of a larger problem. The purpose of Mercury in Virgo is to provide information that supports better decisions, not to make every purchase feel like an examination. There may also be questions around personal value. Comparisons with other people can become more noticeable, especially when income or material progress is involved. Yet the second house works best when the focus remains on individual resources rather than someone else's circumstances. For Leo Ascendant, Mercury in Virgo offers an opportunity to become much clearer about money and resources. Better information can lead to better choices, and seemingly minor adjustments may gradually create a stronger and more efficient financial foundation. Virgo Ascendant. Mercury enters the first house, making this transit especially personal and noticeably increasing mental activity, curiosity, communication, and the desire to make decisions independently. Mercury is the ruling planet of Virgo Ascendant, and its movement through the first house often feels like the mind coming fully forward again. Thoughts may become clearer, ideas easier to express, and situations that seemed uncertain can begin to look more manageable. This can be a period of speaking more openly. Opinions may be expressed with greater confidence, questions asked more directly, and conversations initiated rather than waiting for someone else to begin them. There can also be a stronger desire to explain personal intentions so that there is less room for misunderstanding. Mercury in Virgo is highly observant, so awareness of the immediate environment can become very sharp. Small changes in another person's tone, inconsistencies in information, or details that others overlook may be noticed almost immediately. This can make Virgo Ascendant particularly effective when research, negotiation, planning, or careful judgment is needed. Personal decisions can also move faster. Instead of depending heavily on outside opinions, there may be a stronger sense of knowing what information is needed and where to find it. New plans, studies, conversations, or projects can begin because curiosity has been reactivated. The first house also concerns presentation and the way someone meets the world. Mercury here may bring changes in communication style, appearance, online presence, written material, or the way personal ideas are presented publicly. Updating information, rewriting a profile, changing how something is explained, or becoming more active in conversations can all fit this transit. Because Mercury is so strong in Virgo, the mind can become extremely busy. One idea can quickly produce another, and then another. The ability to analyze is excellent, but knowing when enough information has been gathered becomes equally important. Self-criticism can also increase. Virgo easily identifies what could be improved, and in the first house, that analytical attention may be directed toward the self. Useful self-awareness can quickly become unnecessary fault-finding if every detail is treated as something that must be corrected. There is considerable intelligence available during this period, particularly for situations requiring accuracy and clear communication. The key is allowing that intelligence to move rather than using it only to examine every possible outcome. For Virgo Ascendant, Mercury's arrival in the first house begins a mentally active period of fresh ideas, stronger communication, personal decisions, and greater clarity about what deserves attention next. Libra Ascendant. Mercury enters Virgo and moves through the 12th house, taking mental activity into a quieter and much more private part of the chart. This is less about constant outward communication and more about what is happening beneath the surface. Thoughts that have been pushed aside can return, unfinished questions may demand attention, and information that was previously difficult to understand can begin forming a clearer pattern. Mercury in the 12th house often favors private thinking. Research, writing, planning, studying, or working on something away from outside opinions can be especially productive. Some ideas need privacy before they are ready to be discussed, and this transit can provide exactly that kind of mental space. There may also be conversations that take place confidentially. Someone may share information that is not widely known, or Libra Ascendant may become involved in discussions that need discretion. Listening becomes just as important as speaking during this period. Past conversations can return to mind. A sentence said months earlier may suddenly have new meaning, or an old misunderstanding may be reconsidered from a completely different perspective. Mercury in Virgo likes to examine the evidence, and the 12th house contains many things that were never fully processed when they first happened. This can also be useful for completing work that has been sitting unfinished. Loose ends, forgotten paperwork, unanswered correspondence, private administrative matters, or plans that were started and then abandoned may be easier to deal with while Mercury moves through Virgo. Dreams and the unconscious mind may become more active as well. Ideas can appear at unexpected moments, especially when attention is not being forced toward a particular solution. Keeping notes can be useful because some of the most interesting observations may arrive quietly and disappear just as quickly. One challenge is excessive private analysis. When Mercury enters the 12th house, there is a possibility of replaying conversations or trying to solve questions that do not yet have enough information available. Virgo can keep searching for an explanation even when none is currently possible. Not every thought requires an immediate conclusion. Sometimes this transit works by allowing information to settle until a pattern becomes visible naturally. For Libra Ascendant, Mercury in Virgo is a period for clearing mental clutter, completing unfinished matters, observing more carefully, and preparing quietly for what comes next. Much of the important work may happen privately, but the clarity gained here can become extremely useful once Mercury eventually crosses into the first house. Scorpio Ascendant. Mercury enters Virgo and moves through the 11th house, stimulating friendships, groups, professional networks, communities, long-term plans, and connections with people who share similar objectives. This can become a socially active transit, although Virgo gives these interactions a purposeful quality. Rather than simply spending time around people, there may be more interest in exchanging useful information, discussing future plans, solving a collective problem, or connecting with someone whose knowledge can open a new possibility. Friends may become important sources of information. A recommendation, introduction, conversation, or suggestion from someone in the wider social circle could prove surprisingly useful. Mercury often acts as a messenger, and in the 11th house, that message frequently comes through another person. Group activity can increase as well. Meetings, online communities, organizations, classes, collaborative projects, or professional networks may generate more communication. There can be several conversations happening at once, particularly where plans need coordinating between different people. Virgo adds an organizational element to this house. A group that lacks structure may need someone to clarify responsibilities, improve communication, or bring scattered ideas into a workable plan. Scorpio Ascendant may become particularly good at seeing where information is missing and what needs to happen next. Long-term goals can also be examined more carefully. An ambition that once sounded exciting in theory may now require practical questions. What steps are actually needed? Which resources are available? Who needs to be contacted? Which part of the plan is realistic and which part needs changing? Mercury in Virgo is excellent for turning a distant objective into smaller actions. Instead of thinking only about the final outcome, attention can move toward the next useful step. Friendships may become more conversational during this period, although certain connections can also be evaluated more critically. It may become obvious which relationships support growth and exchange, and which ones mainly produce distraction or unnecessary complications. The challenge is trying to organize everyone. Group situations involve different personalities and priorities, and not every person will approach a plan with the same degree of precision. Becoming frustrated because others are less organized can create more difficulty than the original problem. There is also a possibility of becoming overly concerned with what a wider group thinks. The 11th house involves social circles, but Mercury in Virgo can analyze reactions too closely. For Scorpio Ascendant, this transit opens communication with the wider world. Useful contacts, intelligent collaboration, stronger planning, and practical conversations can help transform future ambitions from abstract possibilities into something much more achievable. Sagittarius Ascendant. Mercury enters Virgo and reaches the 10th house, placing communication, decisions, planning, and mental activity directly into the area of career, professional direction, responsibilities, reputation, and public life. This can be an important period for conversations connected with work. Meetings, interviews, negotiations, presentations, correspondence, applications, or discussions with managers and people in positions of authority may become more frequent. Mercury in Virgo brings a professional tone that favors preparation. Details matter more than usual. A document that is carefully checked, an argument supported by facts, or a proposal presented clearly can create a stronger impression than something elaborate, but poorly organized. Career plans may also require examination. Sagittarius naturally tends to think in large possibilities, while Virgo asks what practical steps would actually turn those possibilities into reality. This combination can be extremely useful. A broad professional ambition may begin to acquire structure through research, training, planning, or a sequence of manageable decisions. There can be increased visibility through communication. Speaking, teaching, writing, presenting information, dealing with clients, managing correspondence, or becoming the person who explains something clearly may attract attention. Competence can become part of the public image during this transit. Changes in professional responsibilities are also possible. New administrative duties may appear. A project could require more organization, or a workplace problem might need someone capable of identifying the small detail that everyone else missed. Conversations with authority figures can be particularly significant. A manager may provide feedback, expectations may need clarifying, or information may emerge that affects future plans. Asking precise questions can prevent assumptions from becoming problems later. This transit can also bring greater thought about reputation. There may be more awareness of how words are received publicly and whether professional communication accurately represents the intended message. The difficulty lies in becoming too concerned with mistakes. The 10th house is visible, and Mercury in Virgo can become highly conscious of being evaluated. Small imperfections may appear much larger internally than they do to anyone else. Another possibility is getting caught in administrative details while losing sight of the larger professional objective. Virgo improves the machinery, but Sagittarius still needs to know where that machinery is going. For Sagittarius Ascendant, Mercury in Virgo can bring meaningful career discussions, sharper professional judgment, and a chance to demonstrate intelligence through preparation and precision. Small decisions made during this period may influence much larger professional developments later. Capricorn Ascendant. Mercury enters Virgo and moves through the 9th house, expanding attention toward education, travel, publishing, legal or academic matters, different cultures, larger ideas, and the personal worldview through which life is interpreted. Mercury in Virgo approaches these subjects with curiosity, but also with discernment. Rather than accepting an idea because it sounds convincing, there can be a stronger desire to investigate, compare sources, and understand exactly how a conclusion was reached. This makes the transit particularly useful for serious study. Courses, examinations, research, specialized training, languages, writing, or subjects requiring careful reading can receive greater concentration. Information may be absorbed more easily when it is organized systematically. Travel can also require more planning. Tickets, accommodation, documents, schedules, transportation arrangements, or changes to an existing plan may need attention. Virgo prefers having the details correct beforehand, which can prevent unnecessary complications later. For some Capricorn ascendants, communication with people abroad or from a different cultural background may become more frequent. An international connection could provide information, introduce a different perspective, or lead to an opportunity involving study or professional development. Publishing and sharing knowledge are also highlighted. Writing an article, preparing educational material, creating content, teaching a subject, or explaining specialized information to a wider audience can fit this transit very well. There may also be a period of questioning long-held assumptions. The 9th house deals with larger interpretations of life, while Mercury asks questions. In Virgo, those questions become specific. An idea inherited from family, education, or previous experience may be examined more carefully to see whether it still makes sense. This does not necessarily lead to rejecting an established worldview. Sometimes deeper investigation strengthens an existing position. At other times, new information reveals that certain beliefs need updating. The challenge is becoming so focused on factual details that the larger meaning disappears. A subject can be researched endlessly without reaching a conclusion if every possible source must be checked first. There can also be disagreements over who has the correct information. Mercury in Virgo values accuracy, but intellectual precision does not require proving another person wrong in every discussion. For Capricorn Ascendant, this transit broadens the mind through careful examination rather than through speculation. Study, travel planning, teaching, research, and exposure to different perspectives can all become important, helping larger ideas develop on a much firmer intellectual foundation. Aquarius Ascendant. Mercury enters Virgo and moves through the 8th house, bringing closer examination of shared resources, financial agreements, private information, complicated emotional subjects, investments, taxes, inheritances, and matters that require trust between people. Mercury in this house rarely remains on the surface. Questions become more investigative, and there can be a strong desire to understand what is really happening behind an arrangement rather than accepting a simple explanation. Shared finances may require discussion. This could involve money managed with a partner, family resources, insurance, taxes, business arrangements, financial paperwork, or responsibilities divided between several people. Virgo encourages careful checking, so figures, conditions, and small clauses may deserve particular attention. This is a useful period for organizing complicated financial information. Documents that have been difficult to understand may become easier once everything is separated into categories and examined systematically. Conversations can also become more private or psychologically revealing. Subjects normally avoided may need to be discussed because silence is no longer useful. Mercury in Virgo tends to ask specific questions, which can uncover details that change the understanding of a situation. The 8th house can also increase interest in research, psychology, astrology, hidden systems, financial strategy, investigation, mysteries, or subjects that require looking beneath appearances may become particularly absorbing. Superficial answers are unlikely to satisfy curiosity during this transit. Information involving another person's circumstances may become important. Someone could disclose something confidential, or facts may emerge gradually rather than all at once. Discretion matters here because not every piece of information is meant for wider discussion. Negotiations can be productive when expectations are made explicit. If resources, responsibilities, or financial commitments are being shared, this is a strong time to clarify exactly who is responsible for what rather than relying on assumptions. The challenge is suspicion becoming analysis. The 8th house naturally looks for what is hidden, while Mercury in Virgo notices inconsistencies. Together, they can sometimes create a tendency to search for a problem simply because every detail has not yet been explained. There can also be excessive focus on financial calculations or complicated scenarios that may never happen. Useful preparation is valuable. Endless mental rehearsal is not the same thing. For Aquarius Ascendant, Mercury in Virgo encourages deeper understanding. Clearer agreements, careful financial organization, private conversations, and intelligent investigation can bring order to situations that previously seemed complicated or difficult to define. Pisces Ascendant, Mercury enters Virgo and moves through the 7th house, placing strong emphasis on one-to-one relationships, agreements, consultations, negotiations, clients, partnerships, and conversations in which another person's perspective must be taken seriously. The 7th house brings other people directly into the picture. Mercury here often means more discussion, more questions, and more situations in which decisions cannot be made entirely alone. A partner may have something important to communicate, or an ongoing relationship issue may need clearer language. Virgo encourages specificity, so vague understandings are less likely to feel satisfactory. Who agreed to what? What happens next? What needs changing? Clear answers become more valuable. Professional partnerships and client relationships can also become busier. Meetings, contracts, consultations, negotiations, and collaborative decisions may increase. Someone with useful knowledge could enter the picture and offer advice that changes how a situation is approached. Mercury in Virgo is skilled at identifying problems, which can be valuable in relationships when the intention is to improve something. A misunderstanding may be resolved by examining what was actually said rather than relying on assumptions about what someone meant. There can also be a stronger attraction toward intelligent conversation. People who are articulate, observant, informed, or mentally stimulating may stand out more during this period. Exchanges of ideas can become an important part of connection. At the same time, the seventh house reflects qualities encountered through other people. Pisces Ascendant may find that others become unusually analytical or demanding. A partner, client, advisor, or colleague may point out details that had previously escaped attention. That feedback can be useful, but not every criticism deserves equal importance. Mercury in Virgo can become overly focused on what needs correcting, and relationships can begin to feel like continuous problem solving if every small difference becomes a subject for discussion. Negotiations benefit from clarity during this transit. Matters are easier when expectations are expressed plainly rather than left to interpretation. This applies equally to personal partnerships and professional agreements. There may also be an opportunity to understand another person's thinking more accurately. Pisces often senses atmosphere and emotion very quickly, but Mercury in Virgo asks for actual words and information. Sometimes asking a direct question reveals something entirely different from what had been assumed. For Pisces Ascendant, Mercury in Virgo makes relationships more conversational, analytical, and mentally active. Important agreements can become clearer, misunderstandings can be corrected, and one-to-one connections can improve when communication becomes specific enough for both sides to understand exactly where they stand.